At this point, we'd like to be subject to questions. I'll simply step and be part of the panel. If you'd like to direct questions to a particular member or to the group, we'd certainly be available now for 5 or so minutes to do that.
Okay, so you're calling on state and local governments to cancel legal contracts that they may have with any ACORN agencies?
The statement we made was to freeze existing spending on those contracts, and consistent with a legal approach, facilitate ending those contracts. We're certainly not asking state agencies or local governments to breach an existing contract. That's reckless. That's not what we're suggesting.
How do you agree to contract without breaching?
Additional notices to proceed. For example, if there's a service contract or a consulting agreement of some kind that is on a rolling basis, certainly governments have the authority to stop those contracts, stop the release of further work, stop further notices to proceed, consistent with law, consistent with obligations that have been made. But within their power, state agencies and local governments, we would ask them to do that. Again, we think in many cases, we're certainly hopeful there's not a large number of these contracts. We've done a query of 1.4 million records as a state and found just one contract. And again, that's a contract that just flows down federal pass-through dollars to the Department of Human Resources. Again, the DHR has been very accommodating with us in getting to the bottom of this, as has the governor's office. And we're just, again, consistent with the law, looking for an immediate freeze until the public and responsible elected officials can be aware of what's being spent out there.
It sounds like it's not an issue here. I mean, by the numbers you've given.
Well, first of all, we've only begun an initial query, and that was our first look. You have to remember, a lot of these contracts are clearly not let by the General Assembly. They're done through the executive branch, but they're also done in a manner from one organization to the other organization. And speaking with the governor's office today, he is quite alarmed by this, and I think he may at some point have something to say about it. But I think what we're asking for is for every agency, whether it be a state agency or a local government, and remember there could be a myriad of contracts issued through local governments, that they go back and look at those contracts, and if there's any legal way to get out of the contract, they need to stop it immediately. And that's what we're calling on them to do. So, yes, there may be legal restrictions in stopping a contract that is halfway through, but every contract is different. And if there in fact is a contract or an escape clause by that local governing body or by the state, we would ask them to take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that no more tax dollars go to ACORN in any manner.
You're asking state and local agencies to look at those contracts to see if they have any. Out of 1.2 million, you only found one. Does that mean that you think there's a lot more that you just didn't have access to because it's been funneled through different organizations?
Well, the web of organizations, the web of agencies, the web of contracts is quite lengthy. So we began this process yesterday, and it will take quite some time. This is the first one we found in less than 24 hours, but there may be others. But again, we're talking about the state government. There are 159 county governments. There are 400 some odd municipal governments. There are school systems. There are all sorts of agencies involved with the dispersing of funds, whether those funds be state funds or federal funds. And we're asking them, number one, to identify if any funds are going to ACORN, and then number two, if you have identified that contract, to look into the contract and see if there's any way legally that you can get out of the contract and to ensure the taxpayers that no more money is going to ACORN.
The $104,000 contract, do you know what services that was paying for, what services were being provided under?
Thank you for the question, Tom. We just got an email just within the last few minutes from Commissioner Walker. I spoke before about it being food stamp program money. It's our belief that it's food stamp awareness kinds of things, helping get the word out to potential food stamp recipients that are below 125% of the poverty line that they're eligible. We believe there's 4 or 5 vendors that provide this service, one of which is ACORN. Again, there's a federally approved list of such vendors, of which the ACORN Institute is one of those. We've got at this point, no knowledge whether or not the specific performance of this contract is in question. The concern, though, is because there are other viable vendors who provide the same service, when you've got an organization that's involved in fraud and felony investigations in 14 states, why would the state of Georgia need ACORN to provide that service when there are other viable vendors?
In your opening statement, you mentioned that you were calling for this action, ACORN and other organizations like that. Are there other organizations today, or what is it like that?
There's not. I really intended to say ACORN and their affiliates and subsidiary organizations. There certainly may be some out there. Certainly we would ask local governments to be vigilant about that, but we're really focusing today on ACORN and their affiliates.
Do you have information of any inappropriate activity by ACORN in Georgia?
I'll answer that. We of course have been shocked at the activity that ACORN has been involved in other states, and I guess perhaps the most shocking part of that is when you see on videotape what they've done in a particular state. You know, the average person would say, well, clearly that's just an isolated incident. But then we see night after night after night, state after state after state, that this organization is involved in things that are actually disgusting. And so while we would like to say, well, this is only isolated in a single state here, the fact of the matter is, clearly it seems to be across the entire organization. We know that ACORN is active in the state of Georgia, has been active in the state of Georgia. They just had a rally here a couple of weeks ago for socialized medicine. So they are active in the state of Georgia, there's no question about it. Our initial investigation is to look into whether ACORN is receiving any taxpayer dollars, because as the stewards of those dollars, that is our primary concern. If we go beyond, once we've satisfied those questions, whether it be from the state or the local level, I think then we need to look at, are there criminal activities that are taking place in the state of Georgia involving ACORN? Right now, we can't bring you that evidence, but it's not something that we can clearly take off the board. We don't want to suggest anyone's guilty until we have evidence. But we will look into that, and of course, we would ask our law enforcement, who's really charged with this, to begin to look into it. If you have an organization that is clearly involved in criminal activity in so many states, it kind of defies logic that they would be white lily clean in the state of Georgia. So, you know, we encourage law enforcement to look into that. But I think it goes one step further too. This organization and what they stand for and what they've done and the activities they've been involved with is something that all of Georgia should reject. So whether it's a government or just another organization that is involved with ACORN, we ask that they would step away and disavow that relationship with ACORN. If you're working with ACORN in the state of Georgia, whether you're a public or private organization, we're going to ask you to do the right thing and step away from them.
Certainly, people are going to say, I mean, that conservatives, Republicans really can't stand ACORN. I mean, you know, the ACORN obviously is left-leaning. It's a liberal organization. I mean, there's just, you know, and Republicans have really disliked this agency for a long time. And I think people might logically look at this and go, okay, now they got the ammunition. Now they're going after somebody they've hated forever anyway.
Well, we're not the ones who made ACORN do what they did on those videotapes. We're not the ones who asked ACORN to take actions that would call for indictments in 14 states. The fact of the matter is, whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative, you should be absolutely disgusted by the activities of this organization. You should disavow them and you should step away. So, you know, some can claim, well, this is just a Republican witch hunt. Look at the facts. The facts are that this organization is involved in criminal activity. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, you cannot stand idly by and accept that type of activity. And we're asking people today to disavow ACORN.